Ashley? Advance it, please. My phone. Ashley. Hello. This is too loud. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And first, thank you so much for joining our session this morning, where we'll be having some interactive and amazing discussion with our ambassadors and regional focal point from 2022 and 2023. And they are all here representing their communities, and they are here representing the voices of their community. And today, this session is going to be on the influence of climate change on public health. And as you all know, yes, sir? Oh, good, that it is evident that climate change has an impact on health. World Health Organization has proven it, and we've seen the impact on the livelihood of communities, and the impact ranges from different communities. And today we're going to be hearing from our here ambassadors their different perspective to this problem and the actions they are taking to ensure that yes, we build resilience across our community. So once again, thank you so much for joining our session today, and it's such a pleasure to have you all. We are going to start the session, or we've already started the session, and I'm going to call on the executive director of the Ashley Lashley Foundation and the founder of the He campaign to come and give us an opening remark and take us through what the He campaign is and how it was bettered and what's the idea behind it and how far the amazing ambassadors have done so far. Please, a round of applause for her as she comes.
Thanks, Yazid. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, ambassadors. I'm so happy to see all of you here at COP28 and here for this pivotal event within the Barbados Pavilion. Indeed, it is a monumentous occasion where we gather to delve into the critical discussion of climate change and health. And that is what the Hey campaign stands for: healthy and environmentally friendly youth, looking at the interconnectedness that climate change has on not only people's physical health, but their mental health. And when I started the Hey campaign over 3 years ago, we had a network of over 21 Hey ambassadors. And it was just based on capacity building, educating youth from 6 different regions across the world about what it means to be a Hey ambassador, how they can get involved in climate and health action. And now today, 2023, we have a network of over 200 young persons from Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, Latin America, Europe, and North America, all advocated for the relative climate and health justice. And as a young person, I am obviously enthusiastic and honored to see how the Hey campaign has been growing over the last couple of years with our partners, Open Societies Foundation, UNICEF, and the Clara Lionel Foundation, who are helping us to provide opportunities for youth globally on climate and health. And I'm happy that with their support, we were able to fully fund 2 young persons, Naya and Naomi, to come to COP to get a COP experience. So I'm happy to hear and see what they have learned over the last couple of days that they've been here. And it just goes to show that throughout the Hey campaign, even with the grant funds that we've given out over the last 2 years, we've given out at least a tune of 20,000 US to young persons globally to execute grassroots projects on the ground. And going into the fourth year, I've actually been pushing the team globally that outside of building capacity, outside of building, giving out grant funding to young persons, what we actually need now within Hay is to see more grassroots projects within the different regions that we have Hay ambassadors. So I'm happy to announce that going into 2024 with the Hay Ambassadorial Network, we'll actually be having our first Hey Campaign Alumni Network, where we would continuously be providing opportunities for young persons who have passed through the Hey Campaign so that they seem and feel like they're a part of the Hey Campaign family even after they have gone through the campaign and the ambassadorial process. And we'll be actually be starting Hey Country Networks. And our goal is to have Hey Country Networks in each and every country across planet Earth doing projects on climate and health. So I know that is something that we've begun to pilot this year, with spearheaded by Naomi, of course, from the Caribbean perspective. But next year, our goal is to have at least 20 country networks with, again, over 200 young persons joining, 20 from each of the varying regions that we have Hey ambassadors for. So I'm looking forward. Every year we're always bombarded with lots of applications from youth globally. I think this year we had over 1,000 young persons applying globally to be a part of the Hey campaign. And I don't know what number we'll be having next year, but what I know, we would have a truly meaningful experience. And I'm hoping that within the Hey campaign, we could also provide more access to our Hey ambassadors with COP badges, even if we're unable to fully fund them. Once they do have funding, we can provide the necessary accreditation badges. So I'm looking forward to seeing the Hey campaign grow. And it couldn't have been where it's at today without the involvement of each and every one of you as Hey ambassadors doing amazing work on ground. Iman with her Earth Warriors, Darian doing tremendous work at the university, Leo spearheading the focal point and the work that we're doing in the Hey African region, Naomi in the Caribbean, and Naya. Naya even shot me one day. She came like super tired on one of our global panels with our partners. And I was panicking. I was like, is Naya going to be ready for this panel? And when Naya showed up for the panel, she totally slayed. So it just shows throughout, Hey, the interconnectedness that climate change has, not only on people's physical health, but also their mental health. And what they're doing is raising awareness within their communities, within their schools, and at a country level about what more needs to be done to build resilient healthcare systems, build resilient people, and also that necessary psychosocial support that is needed for youth who are suffering from eco-anxiety. So we're doing lots of work, and I'm just looking forward next year to seeing the expansion of the Hey campaign, and it will be our year 4. So again, thank you to all of our Hey ambassadors. The only region that is missing today is Europe and North America, but I'm so happy to see all of you here present, and congratulations, and continue to keep up the great work you're doing within your regions. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for that wonderful remark. And now we're going to show a video of what our ambassadors have been doing over the years. But quickly, to take us through what our ambassadors have been doing and how do we come about these ambassadors. On this seat, we have about 5 continents being represented here, and that shows the diversity of our ambassadors. Every year, we call for application. After selection, then they go through a 3-month intensive training where their capacity is being built across climate change and health intersection, and how they can advocate for meaningful transformation within their community and most importantly, how they can sustainably implement their project. We have ambassadors, we have the regional focal point who spearhead the campaign across the region, and we also have other team members that support them in ensuring that yes, they are doing what they are supposed to do. So the next video is going to show the amazing work that our ambassadors are doing. The 2023 ambassadors have been doing. Oh my God, how do I control this? So that's
Let's trail hands together for a healthy.
You can see these are some of the incredible things our ambassadors are doing from across the world on the ground in their communities. I know you guys are proud now. You should be proud of yourself. A round of applause for yourself again. These people are champion. I'm really proud of them, and I'm super glad that I had the opportunity to work with some of them, even indirectly and directly. So now we're going to begin a panel session where they're going to be talking on the impact of climate change on health in their communities. And as we began, I would like to invite Abdul Basit Salahuddin Mikhail, who is going to be moderating the session. And also on the panel, we have Ms. Nia Tapo from Asia, India to be specific, and she's one of our here ambassadors. We also have Naomi. Naomi have been with us since I know her, and she served as here ambassadors and as regional focal point. And for the Caribbean, we also have Ali Sadiq, who is the Africa regional focal point. We also have Darian Castro from 2022, our here regional focal point from Latin America. Then we have our guest Iman. She's also a here ambassador. Please, a round of applause for them as I give Abdul Basit the podium to start moderating the session.
Uh, Hello, everyone. My name is Abdul Basit S. Mikael. I'm from Nigeria. I'm also one of the He campaign ambassador. Actually, I must say, okay. Actually, I must say I feel so proud to see the wonderful work we've been doing over the past year, being showcased, and to get to meet my fellow Hey Campaign ambassadors. Hi, guys. Yeah. So today we are actually going to be talking about the influence of climate change on health, and we've seen the work the Hey campaign are doing, and we would love to hear more about their stories and how the climate change is affecting their various communities and the people there. So, uh, guys, are you ready?
Yeah.
Let's do this. Great. So, I'm going to be asking you a couple of questions, but before then, we would like to get to know you better. Can you please individually introduce yourself, the community you're from, and what you do? Yeah, thank you.
So, hello, namaste everyone. My name is Nia Tapo. I belong to indigenous tribe of Idumismi from Arunachal, India. And at present, I'm working on climate education with inclusive policy for the indigenous. Thank you.
Hi everyone, so my name is Naomi Cambridge. I have been working with the Ashley Lashley Foundation for about maybe 2 or 3 years now, and I also represent the Caribbean region, specifically Barbados, which is where I'm from, in the Hey campaign, and I also am a university student at the University of the West Indies, and I am the Vice President of Climate Change and Disaster Mitigation in my local university organization, UE Stat.
That's wonderful. Next to you, Mr. Aliyu.
Okay, thank you. My name is Aliyu Sadiq, and I'm from Nigeria. I'm the Executive Director of EcoCycle Development Foundation, focused on circular economy solutions as well as climate action empowerment for young people, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Hello everybody. My name is Darian Castro. I am from Ecuador, in South America, and as a biologist, I develop some projects focused on medicine, biomedicine, and even with the indigenous communities. That is part of my activism activities, and yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you too. Hi.
Hi, hello everyone. So my name is Iman Danish Khan, and I'm the founder of Earth Warriors. So basically, I work for climate education, and it's so nice to be here and so nice to meet you all.
Thank you all for introducing yourself. It's so nice to have you here with us as well. So let's go straight into the topic of discussion, which is the influence of climate change on health. So I would like to first start with Maya, right?
Iman.
Iman.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the correction. Iman, can you tell us a little bit about the influence of climate change on health in your community?
Yes, so in my country, Pakistan, and specifically in my home village, Sawat, there's been a lot of destruction happening related to climate change. Most of you guys may know about the 2022 Pakistan floods. So it happened in my own village, and I saw it with my own two eyes, all of that destruction happening, the water coming in. So the thing is, we don't really have a really good irrigation system, so the water, it stayed there for a while, and it was a season for dengue and malaria. So that was a problem that we have faced. Not only does climate change affect the physical health of the people in my community, but also it greatly affects the mental health. So when the floods came, I know a person personally who made a house. He worked 50 years to make that house, and all his hard work, it just got swept away, all that 50 years, and then he took his own life. So climate change has a really big impact on my community.
That is so devastating, and I can see uh, Aliyu nodding his head. He couldn't believe more, and I believe he has something to add with that, like something related to what she's saying that is happening in your community. Can you give us more insight?
Okay, yeah. So just to, I think I shared, the pain of the whole impact of climate change and health. So last year in Nigeria, we had one of the most devastating floods that affected about 33 states out of 36. And these floods were critically directed at affecting health. Why did I say so? You have a lot of communities with improper waste dump sites, all exposed, not properly packaged and stuff. And these hubs for the floods expose the communities to health-related, diseases from these dump sites. So they were like, you could imagine a whole dump site with tons of waste flowing into households, flowing into communities. This was like practical, it was really bad. And after a while, there were huge cases of cholera, typhoid, because victims of these floods do not have places to go to, so they have direct contact with this water, and then you could imagine the whole lot of vector-borne diseases that must have been spread across this. So this is something that is still fresh in my memory, and that's where the angle of if perhaps the floods were not there, then maybe the little problem of waste could be much more managed, and you could the gap is limited, but the floods and the impact of climate change were evident. So these are issues happening everywhere, and you can't cut the link between climate impact and health. It's highly interlinked. Addressing one is like addressing the other, and not addressing one is like you're just contributing to the other.
Definitely. To Naomi, Naomi, can you share your own perspective in regards to the influence of climate change on health in your community?
Yeah, definitely. So even though I represent Barbados, I also represent other smaller and developing states. And actually, what started or what jump-started my journey in climate change and my journey in climate justice was around 2019 when I was still actually in secondary school. So I was about maybe 17, 18. And that was the year when Bahamas was hit by that really devastating hurricane, Hurricane Dorian, which absolutely flattened the islands of Bahamas, specifically Grand Bahama. And Barbados, which was such a great initiative, had a fundraising effort to collect funds for the victims of that devastating event. So what I had done was to gather my friends in my local school, in secondary school, to just collect funds for them. And when I did that, I didn't expect to have such a good reception of that. So what actually happened was we were able to get our ambassador, David Comachong, in Barbados to acknowledge that we had raised all this money, and then we actually got the privilege of meeting the Prime Minister of Bahamas. And what really touched me was his gratitude and the depth of his gratitude, because he was really struck by it, because I had never ever met anyone from Bahamas, but seeing us as another small and developing state that's not too far off from Barbados in reality. I mean, we're in Dubai, this is halfway across the world. Bahamas seems so close in comparison. And seeing the impact that it made to help those victims and see how it could very much easily happen to us. I mean, Barbados, I think, just a couple weeks ago had, although it was extremely minor, a little earthquake. But Jamaica also had another earthquake just a couple days before that. And we see how extremely vulnerable we are, because also Barbados is such a flat island. When you fly a plane over Barbados, you can see everything. And I mean, we don't have the terrain to actually be resilient enough to sustain one of those devastating hurricanes, floods, or earthquakes, any type of natural disaster. So knowing how vulnerable we are, knowing the different realities that we face, we have to think about climate change and health, and we have to think about the mental health impacts that that has, not only the mental health impacts, but of course the physiological health impacts that climate change has on our health, because Barbados is also another country that has severe rates of non-communicable diseases, and a lot of those non-communicable diseases come from climate change in different ways that people don't really realize. So that's why one of the things that we do in the Hey campaign, and one of my core roles, is advocacy and helping to educate youth specifically, but also the wider public on that intersection between climate change and health, because more awareness needs to be spread on that issue.
Thank you very much. And the work you're doing is very inspiring. I'm looking at Darren and hearing your background. You're a biologist, so I'm curious to know. So, what is the influence of climate change on health system?
Well, first of all, as a teacher, because I am a teacher in my country too, I like to explain so dynamic these things, because it's so complex in sometimes when we want to explain what's going on with the dynamic of the climate change, what's the influence of the floods, for example. Floods, that it's so common for the overgrowth of a lake or a river, or for the raining, the constantly raining in different areas like rainforest, wherever. But we need to understand that this kind of dynamic, it's like a multidimensional process. You know, we imagine a square. A square have two dimensions, length and width, and that's it. But what happened when we try to see a dodecahedron or hexahedron? It's a completely, or a sphere, for example, is a completely different the dimensions that we try to do. For example, the depth of that imagine, that picture. So it's so complex when we try to see a picture of the problem, when we try to see it, the reality of that problem, okay? So basically, what's that multidimensional model that exists between the infectious diseases, especially, I talk more about that, infectious diseases, tropical diseases like dengue, like malaria, I exist different species of malaria, and in many of these cases, this plasmodium, it's the genera of this disease, is the protozoa that generate this disease, the malaria. Basically, have a effect depends of the region in that exists. Okay, so basically, what's the point and what's the influence of the consequences of the climate change? For example, the high temperature. The high temperature allow that, for example, these mosquitoes that transfer or spread these diseases basically start to go so high or higher than in other ages. For example, we can see right now, especially in Ecuador, because we have different regions, different weathers. It's so diverse. The biodiversity index, it's so high per area, per area of all around our country. So basically, despite our country have a so small surface, we have a great biodiversity. So what happened with that, for example? We can see that we have mountains, and in the other side we have coast, okay? In the coast exists this kind of mosquitoes, but what happened if I increase the temperature even in the mountains, in the Andean regions, where we can see, for example, glaciers? If that temperature increase, that barrier that exists with the conditions, natural conditions, start to increase the number of mosquitoes that in other cases, in other ages, we can see it in the coast, for example, in the beach, or in the jungle, in the rainforest. But right now we start to see it in a higher heights or altitudes. Okay, so that start to be a problem because we can't control that. The same thing with all of these change of conditions, the devastations of the ecosystem. The forest is a barrier, is the protection for us to this kind of vectors or insects or animals that spread the disease. Okay, so that's the reason because I like to explain this kind of dynamics like a multi-dimensional, multidisciplinary process that even many cases biologists, doctors in medicine, or even sociologists start to get involved and work together to know about this dynamic that it's a complex process, but with a capacity and a good focus in these kind of areas, in the social, in the scientific, in the medical, we can start to know more curiosities or new information about how the climate change can be a public health problem in a short and in a long term too.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It is very insightful. I bet I'm not the only one that get to learn more about the different dimensions we have. That is definitely good. And I'm going to be moving to Tapu. Tapu all the way from India, if I guess it right.
Yes.
Great. Tapu, I believe you've heard the story, and I so much believe you are relating to what they are saying. So what I'm going to be asking you now is, what are those actions you're taking in your communities? You know the challenges, and I bet you're taking the actions, and we've seen some. What are those challenges you're taking?
Okay, so firstly, I belong to a tribal community, so let me start there. So if anything happens, even if we get sick or ill, it's compulsory for us to go to the shamanism. We don't opt for the hospitals. So being a tribal, it's compulsory for us to go to the priest and follow up the thing. So for me, coming to your next question, so for me, if it's impacting on health, it's like impacting our identity. Because for us, we depend on forests for the herbs, for the forestry. Means we are totally depending on the forest because we are not the people. We get all our plants from for the process for the shamanism, we get it from the forest. So as you can imagine, the extent of it, so the impact of climate change won't directly impact on our health because we're directly somehow still dependent on the shamanism. So I know there are still people, they found it very difficult to believe that we are still a small community of people not dependent still in the hospitals. We're moreover one of those people, small communities, still depending on the process of the shamanism. And the other thing is that I'm a daughter of a farmer, and I'll just give you a small reference that my father, he is a farmer, and he has been farming oranges for many years. And this is how he funded for our education. We come from a rural place, and this is how he funded our education. This is how we passed our college. And this year, my father, he was so upset because there was no oranges, there was only 5 pieces. No, it's a very real thing. We don't use any chemicals, we don't use any fertilizers, but you can see the impact of it. So it's basically impacting me and my family. And you can imagine now, coming from a rural community and being an indigenous, we're already saving 80% of the world biodiversity. And we don't have an access to that. We don't have tools. I mean, for me, see, I am not good at many big words. I always end up, I'm never good at big words. But what I have with my own experience is that what we are lacking is the inclusive thing. I would like to say that. And the second question that you asked about what am I doing? So, yeah. So, I belong to an indigenous community, as I said, Idumismi, and we have started Elopa Ituge Community Land. It's called EECEP. It's India's first tropical community land that we started. And we started this as a process to not just save and conserve the forest or the system, but to conserve our own way of living, our own way of process, because for us, it is our identity. So yeah, this is how. And if I talk about the process, how it happens is that for us, we are including most of the youth, especially for my own community. So in Arunachal, my own homestead, we have different communities. So we have more than 36 community. So the community land I'm talking about, it's about my own community. So we're trying to inspire other community to come across. And I think the biggest challenges, as you asked me, the biggest challenges is with the government itself, because we are staying in a place, in India especially, where Northeast is a hub of minerals. It's a place where the government is basically targeting to plant industry or to have big dams. So yeah, I think this is the biggest challenge. We are somehow, we are unable to bring that to the table, because I think it's a high time for people, young people from our community, to come to the table and stay in the policies. And to be honest, even I don't know the language of the policy making still. I'm still learning, and I think it's very important. And that is the reason I'm working on climate education, inclusive policy for the indigenous. And one more thing, if I start talking about the issues, I'm going to take whole time. So.
Okay, I can feel the passion, you understand. And this is a very important thing to also note, that the impact of climate change is not just on our health, actually. It's also on our livelihood and our culture, because we would have to look for what we are going to cater for our families for, before we can be able to even think of, okay, how can we be able to provide for their health care, which is very important. And she also take time to also explain some of the challenges she's facing in her communities, which I believe the rest of the team also share the same. Naomi also shared the work she has been doing so far. So I would like to go to Aliyu. Aliyu, do you mind sharing some of the action you're taking in your community, just briefly?
Okay, so climate change is linked to a lot of sectors, and the health sector is one of it. And you also have the root causes, again, of this climate change, which, again, the waste sector is one of it. Three ways, I would say. One of it is the empowerment angle, whereby we are training a lot of young people to acquire the skills needed to transform or add value to waste products. In the angle of health, in schools, currently we have the PET Eco-Friendly Toilet Project, where we are recovering the plastics from the communities with the students and the community members, utilizing it to build toilets in schools that do not have toilets, trying to reduce the problem of open defecation and plastic pollution, so using one stone to kill two birds. And this is a way to also kind of reduce the pollution and also reduce the health impact of open defecation. Secondly, is the angle of the education and capacity building, because the more, the merrier. So when you have more people, more young people who understand the problem and who understand the solution, and you have more advocates, you have more solution providers, then this effort replicated in multiples can yield more results. So, and one of it is my team developed the environmental climate action game, whereby it's a tool for education that can get them to easily understand the problems relating to pollution, health, climate impact, and also the solutions, what to do to mitigate them. So this was inspired by the research that young people easily understand, through fun ways, fun processes, and just beyond the conventional way of education, teaching. We further need to go off, do something more creative. And the game is now, a tool for education and a tool for to inspire them. So it's called the Plan. Play, learn, and act now. Plan. Yep. So then lastly, the third angle is the policy influencing, which is critical, like Naya mentioned, the angle of policies, aside just the policies, their implementation. So my organization is also pushing, especially climate change and circular economy policies, to ensure that we have much more institutionalization of these policies that can help to reduce the impact of climate change, that can help to provide more value for resources rather than allowing them to become more wasted and depleted to the environment, causing pollution, both human and environmental pollution. So I'll stop here.
Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for all the things you do in your community. Going forward to Darren. Darren, in 1 minute, do you mind sharing some of the actions you're taking in your community to address these issues and ensuring that the communities understand these dimensions?
Yeah, well, in that case, as our their partner told, basically exists many realities when we talk about in a social level. That's the reason because the majority of ambassadors and even the regional focal points with Ashley have that focus, and Ashley even chosen us because she obviously she saw in us all that activities that are related with the society and not only just with the activism in terms of climate change or health. That combination, that structure between the social and the health and climate action is so important to understand, again, the model that I mentioned, that a multidimensional model. So basically, in communities, for example, I don't know, many people in this room knows Nemontenenkimo is the activist that come from Ecuador in the Amazon region. She is a leader from the Waorani community. Her community, like in the rest of indigenous groups with volunteer isolation, are that means that term means that exists isolation from all the Ecuadorian territory, and obviously that's the reason because our country is mentioned like a multicultural or multinationality country, because we have many communities with their own traditions and with ethnic knowledge. That's so important. In the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, many people die in the urban areas. I talk about the cities like Quito, that is the capital city of my country, Guayaquil, that is another city that it's so big in terms of territory. But obviously, what happened? That was the real question in that moment. What happened, for example, with the communities that, first of all, don't have access to the healthcare system, don't have an access to medicine, and don't have enough support or financial support to have a medical center around these regions? What happened with that people? Surprisingly, these communities had the opportunity to show the potential of that knowledge, traditional knowledge, that unfortunately in many cases, especially some of the new generations in the urban area, consider useless. That it's the ethnobotany or the ethnobiology knowledge. That it's the combination between the scientific processes to develop new medicines and new concepts in terms of the medicine, in the biology, in the physiology too, and try to combine all of that with the traditional knowledge of the communities. In many cases, these communities combine hundreds of species of plants to calm down the symptoms of the COVID-19, like the cough, like the fever, and even like the some problems in the coagulation in blood. See, so basically that's the reason, because part of that alternatives that we can see in different cultures, like in the indigenous communities in the Amazon, in the Andean region, it's not exclusive for that communities. We can imitate that kind of behaviors, that kind of knowledge, and especially like this science, like this the ethnobiology and ethnobotany explained, we can combine that knowledge and prepare all the humanity, all the society for the next pandemic situations that unfortunately for the COVID-19, we weren't ready to fight against that disease. And I hope that with all of these conscious that exist not only in the social, even in the science, we can combine again this kind of knowledge with the science and be ready for the next pandemic.
Thank you so much for the wonderful insight. And I can only imagine the mentally impact seeing someone close to your heart being impacted by climate change. So what do you do when things like that happen?
Regarding the question, so what I do, I've also said I'm the founder of Earth Warriors, which is a free-to-use climate education portal. So the thing about Earth Warriors, it's designed for the areas which are most impacted by climate change. For example, the northern areas of Pakistan and just the areas that are impacted. Over there, not many people know English, right? So that's why I've created the portal in the regional languages, like the indigenous languages, so they can really understand. So that's what I did regarding to what I do for the my region.
That is so wonderful to hear. I believe if there are other young people hearing you, they are going to be inspired to take more action like yours. And to Naomi, the other time you were sharing some of the wonderful work you've been doing in your community, like the fundraising and the advocacy you've been putting into action. So can you share more light? I believe you are able to succeed in the fundraising and you are able to get the one of the major stakeholders in your region acknowledgement. You understand with what you do. So what are some of the challenges you've come across and how are you able to overcome them in 1 minute?
So I guess I'll start with the Hey campaign. So I was a Hey ambassador last year, but this year I got the privilege of being the Caribbean regional focal point, giving me the responsibilities of managing all of the Caribbean ambassadors. And I think one of the main challenges is motivating people and mobilizing people, because of course everybody in this space cares about climate change, but the existence of climate apathy and climate anxiety is a very real thing, and it impacts the work that you do. So one of the things that I always say when I'm talking about mental health and when I'm talking about hope is that a lack of hope creates a lack of action, and that is something that I have faced constantly in managing the Caribbean ambassadors. You have to motivate them and inspire them to actually do the work, because it's not that they don't care, they care about the issues, but it's about inspiring the hope within them to actually mobilize their action and mobilize the capacity that they have. Because a lot of youth, although we're in a youth empowerment age, a lot of youth don't really understand the level of potential that they have, and a lot of youth don't really understand that the same thing that I said before, that intersection between climate change and health, which is also why we have our capacity building sessions to educate youth on that intersection. And then in relation to more on education, I guess, within the wider Ashilashi Foundation, we've gone to multiple schools around the Caribbean, and specifically in Barbados, mainly primary schools, to educate little kids on that intersection between climate change and health, because we want to incite basically engender a care and empathy for climate change and that intersection with health, and also other issues that related to youth and the unique challenges that youth have. So inspiring that from a young age helps inspire more action at the older levels, and when they become whatever they want to become in their own spaces, and they incite sustainability into every single sector, because of course sustainability and climate change is a multi-sectoral issue, as Aliyu had stated before. And then the last thing that I would have been just started doing, because I'm only recently Vice President of Climate Change and Disaster Mitigation within UESTAT, which is a youth leadership organization within my University of the West Indies, is we're now starting a Responsible Futures program, which essentially is supposed to engendered sustainability into every single sector of the university. So not just in, for example, the biological sciences or in the social sciences where you might see climate change being discussed. We want to have climate change and sustainability talked about in every single sector of our education system. So in the curriculum and also all in the non-curricular activities as well. So in activities outside of school that would be underneath the university, we want to have sustainability embedded in those discussions as well, because of course, like I said, climate change is a multi-sectoral issue, and we need to help people to understand how climate change impacts them specifically, because if we just rely on morality for people to care about climate change, then we're not really going to have that much action, because that's just the reality of things. So we need to make sure that people understand how climate change impacts you specifically. So if you're interested in sports, say how climate change impacts sports. If you're interested in health, which is what we do at the Hey Campaign, then we educate you on how health and climate change are interconnected. If you're interested in fashion, whatever the case may be, we want to embed sustainability in all systems. So that's some of the things that I've been working on.
Thank you so much. It is very important to note that for us to achieve sustainability, it is important for us to adopt the cross-sectional approach to mitigate the impact of climate change. And it is evident, that young people are mostly the first respondent to climate impact in their various communities. As we've heard, all the approaches, all the actions they are taking in their communities, and I believe not only myself, we are all inspired by the work they are doing, and we can feel their pain as well. So we are going to be rounding up, but before that, I would like to hear in few seconds, final words. What are you going to say to the world? What do you think is the next thing? And it is worthy to note that for the first time in COP, we are having a health day, because I just got to learn that for the past 27 years, there's never a day that is dedicated for health related to climate action. And this year we are able to have that, which happened last few days ago. So, to Tapu, what is your final word? What is your word of motivation to all the audience here in regards to climate change, the impact on health, and the action you're taking?
Yeah, so for me, as an indigenous tribal, I would like to say that I think it's high time that we do include the people who are really impacting, and let's make it easier for them to understand. For instance, for me, even though we have a lot of ground experience, when it comes to discussion or when we come to the policies, it's very difficult for us to understand, really. Even though we have the ground experience, we find it so difficult to understand the policies, the words, because we don't use the big words. We don't do that. So I'm looking forward that people all over the place, especially my fellows who will be working in this field, take initiative so that people will feel more inclusive, so that the language become more easier, so that we can all understand and relate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much to you, Naomi.
I'm gonna keep it short because I know we don't have a lot of time.
important.
But I really resonate with a lot of what Naya said, and I just think my main statement would be: it doesn't take that much to make a difference, and because of the big words, because of the big conferences and everything, it makes it seem like you need to do a lot to make an impact on your community, but it really doesn't. Just try, if you see an area that is in need, do whatever you think you can to help, and always try to include other youth members and also the people that are on the most marginalized spectrum to be included in this space. Thank you.
Mr. Aliyu?
So mine is not far-fetched from what they've said. The thing is, we must agree to the fact that climate change affects a whole lot of systems. And while we're trying to address other issues, we need to look at the issues that affect our health. Humanity comes first. Even before you survive, you need to have health. So while we're trying to address the whole issues of community impact, we also need to look at the impact of climate change on health and make it integral for our developmental processes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Darren?
Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. Well, like many of our friends in in Hay campaign mentioned, exists that lack of equality on equity in the society. That is a part of a problem, that it's like a loop. For example, if continuously I ignore what's the consequences in terms of the marginalizing attitudes, like for example, the lack of assistance or support to the marginalized groups in the society, we perpetuate that situation, and even can be worse in a long time, in a long term. For example, one of these examples that are so clear is what happens if I don't build a medical center in a region where don't exist that. I continue perpetuating diseases that maybe in a long term start to be resistance with antibiotics. It can be so hard to have a treatment for that diseases and have a potentially an epidemic situation. So that is another example that how when we perpetuate bad social attitudes, even we can perpetuate too the misery in the health focus, in a health approach, and even in a social approach too.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. So
Thank
let's
you.
get to hear.
Thank you. I'd like to share a few things, so I'll just keep it short. So what I would like to tell everyone in this room that you might feel like one small difference won't make such a big change. So I'll tell you that that's not the case. So like for example, if you're at a supermarket, if you take one last plastic bag, someone behind you will say, they took one last plastic bag, I'll take one last too, and then it's going to be a chain, it's going to be a domino effect. Also, another thing I would like to tell you guys is you should treat the earth like it's also a human being. So before we were kind to it, it was kind to us, and we formed like a mutual agreement and peace. Now we're being mean to it, taking all its resources, so you can't expect it to be nice to us. So I just want you to keep that in mind, these two things, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing all your perspective, and I believe we have a lot to go back home with. And thank you so much for attending the program. And my own last message would be, as all my colleagues has already mentioned, it is important we start taking action one by one. This action we take individually is what collectively make the most sense, and we should start connecting the influence of this climate change with our daily reality. That way we can get a lot of people to take more action, to understand the impact and the stories, and if they don't take the impact, what it will result to. So thank you so much for having us. We are welcome.
Can we give them a round of applause again? You've done a really wonderful job when it comes to sharing your experiences, and we've heard your perspective and what you're doing across your community, and we couldn't be more proud of you. I saw Ashley nodding her head to say, oh, definitely the next generation of young people are ready to take action, meaningful one. So as we are about to wrap up the session, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here and spending your time with us. COP is a very busy place. Everybody's going from one place to another. Before we wrap up, do we have any question from our audience, or someone wants to contribute something in 1 minute before we call it a day? Just to be sure. Oh, fantastic. We have Sakina. How do I get the mic?
Where's it?
You're audible? Go for it. Go for it.
Oh, wait, just behind you.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And I want to commend your effort all through, because from what I've seen here, we've seen diverse people from diverse settings, from diverse contexts. and actually out there for one cause. And I want to commend you. I want to tell you that this is great and this is a motivation for young people. Let's keep the spirit going and let's do more for the community. For me personally, I would like to know when the next A fellowship will be starting, because I'm actually motivated to be one of the fellows, and it will be great to be part of you. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much for that, wonderful. And we have someone that wants to also say something. Someone wants to say something, then we.
You want me to answer the question for her first?
Yeah, let's.
Yeah.
The person.
Just very briefly. So yeah, the Hay campaign, the next whole cohort starting is in I think January. Well, the advertisement for it will be in January, but the actual onboarding of the people will be in March. So yeah, the Hay campaign is always open to new ambassadors, and we would love to have you on board.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zeliha. I'm from Nigeria. I would like to commend all the beautiful work you're doing around health, environment, and sustainability. But I would just to ask, a form of clarity to those from Nigeria, most especially, because we're talking about sustainability here, which is quite important in the work we do as Hay Fellows. I would like if Aliu or Yazid can talk more about how you work with the community and if there's anything around policy, how to ensure that most of the work you do is actually legislated in Nigeria, because it's beautiful, young people are taking action, but outside the work you do as Hay Fellows, when there's no Hay Fellowship, what happens, right? What happens to ensure that everything you do don't just go down the drain? We have a lot of issues around climate, and one of the major issues we're facing with the crisis in Nigeria is climate change. So you go to the northern part of Nigeria, we have issues with banditry and all sort of civil unrest. It's because of climate, and you see how devastating the drought has caused malnutrition to children and leads to all sort of health issues. But legislating some of the work you do around policy influencing, you mentioned, it's quite important if you can enlighten the audience so we can also share experiences.
Thank you. I would answer some part of the question and also leave some part of the question with Ali, who recently worked with ambassadors from across Africa, and I know he worked with ambassadors from Nigeria. So one of the things, what your concern has been one of our major concern also at the Ashley Lashley Foundation, thinking around sustainability, and that's why we are rethinking the whole program. But before we start rethinking the program, we have the Hay Parliament program that is policy centric. We believe you can't just train people on policy advocacy when they don't know the policy processes. So we establish a system like a parliamentarian system where the Hay ambassadors, who happen to be the Hay parliamentarian, have different positions. We have environmental ministers, we have ministers of across section, just for them to understand how this system can work together to achieve the problem they have in their community. And at the end of the program, they are charged with the responsibility of developing a project within their community using their own experience, a policy-centric project to carry out this project within their community. So what we're trying to also do to sustain that is to create a network within countries, not just have ambassadors across countries, but have network of Hay ambassadors across this country so that they can work together and support themselves. And one of the regional campaign or the campaigns we are launching, which is also related to what you said, is trying to train these ambassadors, not only the parliamentarian, but all the ambassadors on policy advocacy. And one of the projects they will be working on is targeted on policy advocacy, maybe inclusion, depending on the impact of climate change on health in their community. Some will be working on inclusion of climate and health in intersection in their educational curriculum. Some would decide to work on other things that affect their community. But that's part of the things we're doing for sustainability, to ensure that these people are really aware of the policy processes and also taking action in that regards. Ali, do you want to talk on how we engage communities or the ambassadors engage community?
Okay, just to add, the Hey Action or the Hey campaign, as the name implies, Hey, healthy and environmentally friendly youths. Um, Over our last few months of engagement as the Hey Regional Focal Point for Africa, working with young people from across African countries, about 24 particularly. The angle for me has been amplifying the work that they do to make more impacts, coming in as an umbrella of Hey campaign ambassadors. And this has given ambassadors the platform to amplify their work. We have people like Kabir who is into waste recycling and stuff linking to reducing pollution, which through the Hey platform he has been able to make more impact and also get some grants. We also have people doing other amazing stuff around agricultural, climate smart agricultural practices. So the Hey gives more platform to bring in all of these beautiful ideas and replicate it across countries, not just in Africa, but also in Caribbeans, in Asia, in Europe. I think the angle of the policy, Yeti spoke about that. But for our action, some of the things you saw has been like policy advocacy, where myself with other Hey ambassadors from Nigeria organized the National Climate Action Awareness March in July 12th, where we leveraged, we carried out an action that was targeted at decision makers in Nigeria and also policymakers. And our demands then was looking at the rapid implementation of the Climate Change Act, as well as it was just after the elections, and so some of our demands was also getting ministers of environment who is credible and competent enough to drive. So in that angle, we are like a push for the policy, but most importantly, we have, in terms of the Africa action, have leverage on like groundwork, but very good recommendation as well.
Thank you so much for that response. And just to add and give a closer remark, is that as part of the ambassadorship program, we have a tailored capacity building, and part of the capacity building is to ensure that what happens after their tenures ended as Hey ambassadors. We talk about integrating them into the Hey ambassadors network. Then how do we ensure that this organization or these young people continue to grow beyond our support? We have capacity building around grant application and all that, just to ensure that they are grant ready within their organization as an individual, and we're also building their capacities in other sectors as well, just to be sure that yes, these people are ready to scale up and are ready to make even bigger impact beyond the Hey campaign ambassadorship program. If we don't have any more question or recommendation, I'd say, or addition, I'd like to thank you all for joining our session, and we would like to say a big thank you for spending some part of your evening with us today to hear how brilliantly our Hey ambassadors have addressed this topic and how we are going to also continue to make bigger impact as a community of young people who are passionate about the intersection of climate change and health. Thank you so much for joining, and it's such a pleasure to have you this evening. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So would like to have a group photograph.